Ooh, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, back in the BDSM studio. I know you've been waiting all week to hear my melodious voice coming back through the melodious microphone. Well, microphone can't be melodious, but whatever, through my better equipment. How about that? My more stable equipment. To hear me talking through that, well, I am back. Don't you worry about it. But I am not alone, because this is your Star Wars update, baby. And that means that I am being joined by my man, Robin Freebeard. Welcome back, man.
Woo!
Letting it rip. I love it. Man, it has been, I'll tell you, July, hell of a month for Star Wars. Late July.
Right. Just when you think we were going to get a slow Star Wars news month, they just kind of like, they hit us with the barrage.
Yeah. And, and it's a good thing. I mean, in fact, it's almost fortuitous that we've waited or that in general, when we do this show, when we do the Star Wars update for Patreon, that we end up doing it almost like the last day of the month, because it seems like Disney just waits until the very end of any month to really hit you with a bunch of stuff. And of course, recently the Thrawn Alliances book came out. I still haven't had the chance to finish that.
Me either.
So we'll get into that. We'll save that for August. Not that I expect August to be a slow month. Now I just don't expect there to be a slow month.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned a thing about how tactical Disney is about their releasing of Star Wars news. I mean, just like since we started doing this together, I'm really starting to pay more attention to how Disney releases stuff, and it does seem very calculated.
Yeah, I mean, every time, like, we'll have stuff set up like all month that we'll be collecting news about, but then there'll be some huge story, towards the end of the month. And it's weird how that happens. I think certainly Disney was, this month, it's not so tactical in that we have San Diego Comic-Con. And so that's like a set thing, and you knew they were going to talk about stuff, or they were going to talk about it. What is it? D20 or D30? Is that what they call it?
D23,
whatever it is, Disney's own little, their own little Comic-Con that they have.
Right.
You never know if they're going to save it for that or what, but wow, did we get a lot of news from San Diego Comic-Con this year. It hasn't always been that way every year as far as Star Wars goes, but this year, hell, it was. And we're going to get into all of that. Like I said, Thrawn Alliances, we will be talking about that next month, but we will get into a review of a comic series that just finished, which is the comicization of the novel by Timothy Zahn, which is the first Thrawn novel, since the character was really reintroduced in season 3 of Star Wars Rebels, which I think, is it today that Star Wars Rebels came out on Blu-ray? We're recording this on July 30th. It's either today or tomorrow.
Something like that. Yeah. I haven't been keeping track just because I already have, honestly, stuff on my computer.
Right. No, I hear you, man. I seesaw on this, right? Because like, I love the Blu-rays and all that, but then I've gotten so used to, especially over the past week, I've gotten so used to like watching stuff in VR. Like I put on my Oculus Go headset, but there's not really a practical way to watch a physical Blu-ray disc on the software within the VR headset. And so like I've gotten to the point where I'm kind of digitizing everything again, just so I can watch it in the big movie theater on my VR headset. So yeah, I hear you. I'm back and forth on that. I'm like, oh yeah, I want the Blu-rays. And then it's like, oh shit, but this is how I watch this stuff so much now. And why the hell would I want that? But anyway.
I try to be more minimalistic too, in that I try to like constrain my purchasing of like physical products to things that, like, if it's really special.
Yeah.
So and the thing is with the Rebels Blu-rays, most of the quote unquote extra content has just been the episodes of Rebels Recon, which are up on YouTube. So what do I need that on a disc for?
No, fair enough. That's a fair point, really to bring up. So anyway, so I think that's out there. It's either season 4 is out now or it's coming out tomorrow, but that's neither here nor there. We have, not that that's not uninteresting, but we have plenty of other things to really get into. And in fact, really, this is the announcement, I think. Let's just break into it. This is the announcement that really, there was 2 huge announcements from San Diego Comic-Con. There's another one we'll get into, but there's 2 big ones. One of them wasn't even, they announced was the cast listing. That wasn't at Comic-Con. They just did that.
No, that was afterwards. Yeah.
Okay. So that wasn't from Comic-Con, but the cast listing.
That was just this last week too, I think.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this was a huge deal. Obviously, we're going to talk about that. But before we get into that, we'll talk about really, I think, probably the biggest news and the biggest shocker out of Comic-Con entirely. Not just a matter of Star Wars, but just all the way around. And that is, what is it? Hashtag Save Clone Wars or Clone Wars
Clone Wars saved. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh
I mean, when I couldn't believe when I heard I get the notifications on my phone from the YouTube app for the Star Wars channel, and when it said Clone Wars trailer, I'm like, what the fuck's this? And I watch it, and you're watching it for the first few minutes, and you have this, you're seeing like these two rows of Clone Wars of helmets from clone troopers, say from like the episode 2 era, or particularly from the show Clone Wars. And you're thinking, what are they just like doing some kind of remastering, some kind of big re-release box set or something like that? You have no idea what the hell's going on. And then you finally start to get the picture that, oh shit, these are going to be some new episodes. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, when you heard about this, I mean, what went through your head, Rob?
Well, I mean, it was oddly enough, I heard it about it from you. Mm-hmm. And the only reason, I wasn't really spending much time on the internet that day because it was my birthday.
Yeah.
That got announced on. And talk about awesome birthday present.
Absolutely. Yeah. I sent it to you. I sent you the link and I'm like, happy birthday, man.
Yeah. My mind was blowing. I mean, just about, and I know from listening to your podcast, we've both been having, certain not so great feelings about Star Wars lately.
Yeah.
And what a way to really kind of reinvigorate my love of the franchise. Because I never would have expected to do this. And it was here again, I mean, tactically really smart move on Disney parts to kind of do something like that for the fans and really try to build some, goodwill and what's been a rather kind of, dour atmosphere lately.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I really think so. Well, I want to get into the details of it, but I really think that Clone Wars, it's one of those things where, as long as people have watched it, they generally love it, or at least as they can get to season 3 anyway.
Right.
Which that's a problem with the show, but yeah,
I found the biggest problem with people with the Clone Wars is just getting them to watch it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it is kind of a confusing show because it's not really in chronological order. I mean, there's a few different little issues like that, but once you're into it, you're into it. And this was really, I think, talk about tactical. It was a guaranteed way, I think, to appease fans and say, okay, we're kind of screwing up the future. We're kind of screwing up this, but hey, guess what? We're going to get you your hookup. We're going to finish up. And Dave Filoni's in charge, so everybody's happy.
Right.
So it's a 12 episode. I mean, you wouldn't call it a mini series. I don't know if we're going to call it season 7 or how it's ever going to be officially labeled. But it is a 12 episode. It's not going to be like they're going to do a bunch of more seasons or anything. This has a very set run of 12 episodes, and I think that's fine. And was it Siege of Mandalore or I'm trying to remember what the I do have a link in the show notes.
I'm pretty sure that's the timeline. In fact, Filoni has talked about this storyline before. Mm-hmm. And released some pretty significant details about it. So, I mean, if you really want to spoil the plot for yourself, the what's in those episodes is out there on the internet.
Right.
But yeah, especially when they showed the clones with the painting of Ahsoka's sort of, I don't know if those are tattoos or what that she has, but they basically painted the clone arm to look like Ahsoka. And I remember that being like a specific plot point to the story that was the Siege of Mandalore.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, and in the trailer, you see Ahsoka, and of course, like right at the end, and because they know everybody loves Ahsoka now, which I'm glad. I mean, I'm so glad that she's a popular character now. And that was awesome, to have her turn around in the hologram, and you're just like, oh fuck yeah, and they hear, as soon as you hear Matt, it didn't watching the trailer. It's a fine trailer. It doesn't really hit home until Matt Lander is talking. And then as soon as you hear his voice, you're just like, oh yeah, okay. Which is amazing in itself because, Anakin is a character that people really, starting from Jake Lloyd onward, never really gave a shit or a lot of people didn't like. But, Matt Lanter.
Up until the Clone Wars.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, you talk about Matt Lanter's Anakin, nobody has a problem. And you're like, oh, yeah,
Right.
no, that's the man right there.
Well, I mean, the whole series really kind of like for a lot of people, probably myself included, that kind of redeemed the character from how he was represented in the films.
Sure.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned remastering, because like it's long been like sort of just like a fan dream of mine if they would like redo the prequels in the Clone Wars, animation and actors and all of that. I think that would be really cool, but I know that will never happen.
No, it won't. But that's not an atrocious idea. In fact, that's we do our question of the month now on the Star Wars update, and that kind of subject might come up a little bit during the. But you raised an interesting point. Is that I would love to see. I mean, now that you say that, I would love to just see comic books like they've been doing with The Last Jedi. They did with Rogue One, where you get like deleted scenes and everything within that aren't in the movie, the actual movie proper. I'd love to see that with episode 1, 2, and 3. Give me some deleted scenes. I'll take it. And I don't know, maybe they can flesh stuff out that's going on, but regardless, this is so now I think I've heard that this 12 episode series of Clone Wars that they're doing is going to lead right up to episode 3.
Yes, that's the way the storyline ends.
Right. So this is Filoni really getting his chance to put the capstone on Clone Wars, which I think is wonderful. I think that this is very much needed because again, Clone Wars is Star Wars on the grandest scale, and I think we could use some grand scale Star Wars again. And also, this is obviously this is going to be put onto Disney's streaming service, and it's going to be exclusive to that. I mean, what a way to get subscribers, because I heard plenty of people say as soon as they heard about it and that it was going to be on the streaming service, they're like, all right, yeah, I'll sign up. I mean, because this is just a guaranteed way to make that happen. Because if you did watch Clone Wars, you get it. Like, you understand, just how great and what a big deal this is. And I think I'm going to guess that, they're not messing around. It's going to go right to the grown-up version of Clone Wars, because certainly in the first couple seasons of the show, it was definitely geared towards children.
Well, you mentioned that the story going up to episode 3, and point in fact, it actually goes past or up to the end of episode 3.
Okay.
So, interpret that as you will.
Right. Yeah, that could be very interesting to see.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this big time. I mean, and I haven't heard any complaints. I mean, like, this has just been a unified front from Star Wars fans saying, okay, great. I'm glad that we're getting this. Everybody's excited. Everybody's happy, which is great, because everything else has been fucking divisive, in Star Wars land. Yeah. So, I mean, what did you have any other thoughts on the whole Clone Wars coming back? I mean, any hot takes?
I was really just, for once, I was really shocked by an announcement. I mean, this is the first time Disney's done something that would kind of like seemed, outside of the sort of mindset they've been in, because when they took over, they one of the first things they did was shut down the Clone Wars and shut down LucasArts, and this gives me the hope that hey, they can take the Clone Wars seriously. Maybe they can take some of this other stuff that they neglected more seriously too.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think that's unfair. And yeah, it is, because finally this feels like something that this is actually for the fans. As for a lot of what's been put out with Star Wars hasn't exactly felt that way.
Right. Well, and like I said, when they took over, they really kind of treated the prequels as like the redheaded stepchild of the franchise.
Yes.
And just, like, aside from the links in Rogue One and Rebels, because Filoni had control of that.
Right.
There really wasn't that much reference to the Clone Wars at all. And I know there's a lot of people that love those movies. And I and I know it's got its haters too. I mean, I used to dislike them more than I do now, but you really can't, like, especially after watching the Clone Wars series, you really can't dismiss that part of the story.
Right.
As part of the larger whole, because it's really critical.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people now, a lot of fans will, especially ones that are very critical of the prequels. They'll come out now and they'll say, "Well, the story's great, just the execution might not have been,
Right.
the best."
Right.
And I can understand that. I can take that, like I can accept that kind of criticism a lot better than they just suck or something like that. But that's the thing for me is I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed the films. I've enjoyed them since 1999 as far as the prequels go. And to have more respect getting paid to that era, I couldn't be happier.
Right.
I mean, I'm really glad for that. In fact, we're going to talk about some more stuff, some more serious respect getting paid to the prequels in a little bit of a later story here. So, but yeah, this just feels good. Go ahead.
And one other point, just for the people out there who might be doubters as to whether or not these movies actually have appeal or have had appeal or still have appeal. Like Clone Wars content has been like the most requested content that for Battlefront 2,
right?
That people want. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's like real visible demand for more Clone Wars stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I'll tell you, like, so speaking of Battlefront, like with Battlefront 2, when because I pre-ordered it, blah, blah, blah. And, I played the early demo and everything where in the multiplayer, you get to go around as Darth Maul and you're, hacking and slashing away a bunch of battle droids.
Right.
I mean, that just felt, the game didn't live up to everything else, but when I was doing the beta, I was like, yeah, no, this feels like Star Wars. This is good.
Yeah.
I'll take this. And so, yeah, I agree that's an interesting point to bring up. And I agree with that. So yeah, this is just a win-win. I mean, this is some of the best news you could possibly get. As far as Star Wars.
Like I said, I mean, the only other news that could possibly be better than this, that they announced that they're reopening LucasArts as an actual studio for producing Lucasfilm content.
Yeah, you'd pretty much have to come out and say, so we're going to do TIE Fighter 2.
Right.
And,
it's
going to be released for all major systems and everyone's going to be happy. And when they say that, okay, like that's really what you'd have to do to be like any bigger than this. Though
exactly.
Though maybe the Thrawn announcement might be the only one that would be bigger, that was bigger because that was so huge when that was announced.
Yeah.
But this is pretty massive, and Filoni did his. I haven't seen actual video of it, but I've heard people talk about it that were there. That Filoni was like pulling stunts the whole time.
Yeah. Well, I reminded, like, the way people were talking about it. It reminded me of when I went to Celebration and we saw the second Force Awakens trailer. The "We're Home" Chewie,
right?
Which, I mean, that was just like you had you had to be there sort of experience, and that's the way people are describing that event at Comic-Con this year. I really wish I could have been there, but unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I hear you. but yeah, I mean, because that moment, and is very similar in my opinion, not at the same level, but I mean, because we're talking about Harrison Ford in that sense, but to have, again, we're the end of the trailer where Matt Lanter, where Anakin and Obi-Wan are walking in and they're talking, and then you see Ahsoka. I mean, that's very much a "We're Home" Chewie moment.
Exactly. I was just going to say the exact same thing.
Right.
It took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah. No, it was so beautiful. Well said. So anyway, anything else you want to add on the whole Clone Wars affair?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah. I was again. It's some of the best news you could get, like we said.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am really excited for it. I'm definitely going to be signing up for their streaming service just for the Star Wars content, probably, unless they're going to start doing some Tron shit. Otherwise,
man, if they brought back Uprising.
Oh, what I'd give for that. I mean, they're putting Tron stuff into their rides again. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they had a Tron, an actual Tron ride, but it's in the Disneyland, like Tokyo or something.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, actually, Tron's huge over there. Like, there's like whole bars over there.
Right.
It's really
isn't that odd how, like, it's kind of like foreign interest in American properties have actually like saved some of these things from just dying off completely.
Oh, fuck yeah. Oh,
because I mean, like, yeah, if we had to rely just on what Americans were interested in, some of the best stuff out there would not be around.
I'd have no new music to listen to.
Right. Yeah.
It's only because in Europe people have actual taste and I still get to hear some great metal,
Right.
It's not coming from the Americans.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, I hear you. That is an interesting point. And of course, Japan is just, you got to love people that are just that passionate about shit. But Anyway, all right. So why don't we get into our next story? And this is a story that is at least equal to, just shy of upstaging, really the Clone Wars announcement. But this is definitely news that was I think on a grander scale, because while the average person out there, not Star Wars fan, just the average person, probably wouldn't, give a shit about the Clone Wars coming back, even though it's one of the biggest pieces of news for Star Wars fans. The idea of Carrie Fisher being back in theaters is certainly something that would be, that shocked everybody. And even people that I talked to who I know aren't Star Wars fans, they knew about this news. So this was huge news when it hit. And it hit on July 27th, 2018. And it was the cast announcement for episode 9, which is, of course, more or less in development. And that's kind of probably the two names. Well, also I'll read some of the names here, but there's going to be two that stand out as, oh, okay, they're here. Maybe three. So returning cast members, you have Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, of course, John Boyega, of course, Oscar Isaac, of course. I feel terrible. I'm not going to be able to pronounce a couple of these names. Lupita Nyong'o. I feel bad.
Yeah, that's close.
Yeah. So Don Hall Gleason, anyway, Kelly Marie Tran is going to be there, Junice Satomo, and Billy Lord, of course, Billy Lord, daughter of Carrie Fisher. And then, so there's going to be some new people, Naomi Ackie, Richard E. Grant, and of course, Kerry Russell. Everybody's been talking about that for a little while. Mm-hmm. Some people saying it's going to be Mara Jade. Probably not. No. So I don't see that coming.
No.
And then here's Anthony Daniels. So there's your veteran, of course, doing C-3PO. But here's the big three that matter. First off, Billy D. Williams coming back as Lando. We all kind of knew this was happening based on like him showing pictures of himself working out. And I think this is fantastic. Like, I love the fact that Billy D. Williams is coming back. I mean, how do you feel about that, Rob?
I think it's great. Didn't they announce that separately, like a lot, earlier in the month?
Yeah, they might have done it separate. So, but we knew pretty well ahead of time that it was a good bet. Right. He was coming back.
Right.
Yeah.
And people have been wanting that for a while. In fact, a lot of people were surprised that he wasn't in episode 8.
Yeah, and Last Jedi, right? I mean, in fact, actually, his part in Battlefront 2, in the storyline of Battlefront 2, I thought was the best part of the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was so cool.
Yeah, the banter between him and what was the other character's name?
Oh shit! Yeah,
Duros guy.
Yeah.
I mean, that was some of the best parts of the game, like story-wise.
I was laughing my ass off. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, so Billy D. Williams, very welcome to come back. I think that's awesome. So that's certainly big news. But then, here comes the two big ones. First off, of course, well, I already buried the lead, or not buried. I already cart before the horse, whatever. But Mark Hamill is listed on the cast. So what people are saying that no, there's no way Luke's not coming back in 9. It's happening. It's definitely going to be happening. And so that's exciting news. We can break down into that. But then the other part is, of course, like I said, Carrie Fisher is going to be in episode 9, and they are using unused footage from The Force Awakens to allow for her to be in this. So why don't we break down? I mean, you can tell me how you felt about, the announcement of Carrie Fisher. I think that's the one that is certainly the biggest news on all of this.
Yeah, that was really kind of the biggest surprise.
Sure.
It's not surprise. The biggest surprise for me is that they're going to be using primarily, it sounds, footage from episode 7.
Right.
Whereas there had been rumblings for a while that there was a lot of extra footage from episode 8 of her. And I'm wondering if they're tossing that out and just using the footage from episode 7, which I wasn't even aware that there was a lot of extra content from
we knew there was some
in that movie.
Right. We knew there had to be some, because in the original trailer, you have Ramaz Kanata's handing Leia the lightsaber.
That's right. Right.
And that wasn't there. But so there's something, but yeah, I don't think we knew there'd be enough to, warrant this announcement, I guess. I don't know how significant her part in the movie is, or how long it's going to be. I mean, I kind of have my doubts in that regard, just because they are limited to the footage that they have left over. Yeah.
And the other part of it is like they had to address this at some point. People have been, really kind of hammering, Lucasfilm, Disney about questions about what they're going to do ever since she died.
Right.
And their comment has been, no, we're not going to use CGI.
Right.
That's the only thing that they've ever said definitively.
Well, I think they said they weren't going to recast her either, or the words might have been a little fishy around that. But
yeah, I think it was a little fishy around that, and I know there was like a fan petition online to get certain people to recast as, which I didn't really get behind because I mean I honestly I'd rather as shitty as this is, I'd rather her character meet her demise off camera than have somebody recast in her role.
Right. Yeah, I can understand that. I'll admit that I was more on board. Like, I thought it was a ridiculous idea of recasting her until like a guy on Rebel Force Radio said, "Oh, I'd put Kate Mulgrew in the role," and then I was like, "Oh, well, I'd do that."
Yeah, I mean,
like,
I could see it, but just I don't know. To me, it just doesn't feel right, and
Sure.
I don't really have a logical argument against it. Like it's just a personal feeling that it doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'd ever be something that would be fully accepted, and I don't think anyone would necessarily like remember Princess Leia, being played by Kate Mulgrew so much. But I would have.
Right.
She's one of the few people that, or if anyone, that I think it could have worked for quite a few reasons.
I mean, she certainly has the chops to pull it off.
Yep.
Like you said, I think the biggest problem would be getting people to accept her in the role, no matter how good she was at, performing.
Yeah. Now I'll ask you, I mean, do you think, how is this footage going to, or how do you think this footage is going to play out? I mean, it's anybody's guess, but, I'm thinking like, okay, maybe they're going to use it for, as like a hologram, like she'll show up as a hologram, to communicate with whatever's going on. I mean, there's no mention, like they can't use her lines, right? From Force Awakens.
I don't know. Well, I mean, and see, here's the weird thing is that they say they're not going to use CGI, but there absolutely is technology out there where they could reproduce her voice and create new lines.
Yeah, Adobe developed the technology. You can speak into it for like 15 seconds, and
right, and it's really convincing.
Yeah,
I mean it's this is like a technological concern that probably be of interest to your users, for Sovereign Tech. But I mean, like, I have some real concerns about what happens when this technology like hits the commercial market.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't, I'm already trying to like get people used to the idea. Look, don't believe any video.
Right. I mean, you think fake news is a problem now. Just wait until you see, when people pair it with stuff like this and deep fakes and.
Yeah, I mean, hell, it might already, so much of it might be really fake news, very the dog style kind of stuff.
Right.
I'm
saying like when like the everyday person can get a hold of this technology and use it for whatever they want, it's going to be a crazy time. And I think that's probably why, I mean, they demoed this technology years ago and it hasn't come out yet. And I think they're intentionally keeping a lid on it for that very reason.
Oh, they got to be terrified. Yeah. What would come out of that? So, I don't know how exactly this is all going to work because I can see using the footage, but again, like I just can't picture how the lines from episode 7 are going to work in episode 9. Maybe they would. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, you got me. I have no clue what they're going to do. I really don't. I have a hard time guessing.
Yeah, I mean, because because it feels like to me, okay, if you're gonna like make up the lines a bit, and not say certainly that was done in episode 7 where they used Obi-Wan Kenobi there, Alec Guinness. They used his voice and they cut it up to where he says Rey, and so they've done that before. So I guess they could chop stuff up maybe, but where does that not, like, if you're still faking the voice to some degree or making the voice say something it didn't actually say, I don't see how that's any different than using CGI for the character. Like,
I agree. But from a technological standpoint, there's a fuzzy line there.
Sure.
They could say, oh, well, yes, we use some technology to complete these scenes, but what you're seeing on the screen is not CGI at all.
Right.
And when people think about CGI, they're basically thinking about visual effects. Right. So, I mean, they could fiddle with that line a little, I think. Now, whether or not people accept it, I don't know.
Yeah. This raises so many things. I mean, there's just so many questions that we probably really won't know the answers to until we actually see the damn film, which we've got boy, we still have over a year now, before we get to see that. That won't be till
Yeah.
December of 2019.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, when I heard the news, I get it. Like online, everybody has very tearful reactions and everything, and I understand that. I mean, I was one of those people. I think a lot of the big fans were just always kind of thinking, like, okay, how are they going to pull this off? How are they going to do it? We're all just kind of waiting for the answer.
Right.
And it's a fine answer. I really don't have a problem with what they're doing. But it I don't know. I guess in a way it didn't surprise me. And so it didn't like so emotionally strike me, but I can imagine that when I'm sitting in the theater watching episode 9, it's going to hit. I'm pretty sure tears are going to fall pretty hard.
Yeah. I pretty much felt the same way. Like I said, I wasn't too surprised by the announcement itself. I was mostly concerned by, what they said in the content and so far as the footage they were using.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, not a whole lot else to talk about as far as the cast goes. Certainly Carrie Fisher is the big news. Mark Hamill coming back. I mean, are you thinking Force Ghost? What do you think?
Yeah. No, I don't see any other way they could really do that. I mean,
yeah.
And here again, this didn't surprise me at all. I think the way that a lot of people reacted to episode 8, they kind of painted themselves into a corner, or like, we didn't really address this in a way that gives people closure. So we have to bring Mark back.
Yeah. And I'm more than happy about it. Like, yeah, let's do it. Because I didn't feel, well, I mean, when he says, even in episode 8, when he says, see you around, kid, I mean, he's pretty much saying he's going to be back. That's just like the Terminator saying, I'll be back.
Right.
They're really, yeah. I mean, I was just expecting it, so it wasn't necessarily a shock. I get for a lot of other people, it might be a shock because the average person's like, oh, Luke Skywalker's dead. Okay. I leave the movie theater, and they don't even think about episode 9 for however long. So that might be a shock for those kinds of people, but otherwise, yeah, not a huge surprise.
I will make one prediction though.
Yeah.
I think that in episode 9, they're going to do something that expands what we know Force ghosts can do.
Uh-huh. Okay. Do you have any idea, any thought?
No, I don't know. Okay. I don't have any specific thoughts on that.
Okay.
I'm kind of thinking back to episode 4, when Obi-Wan makes the statement to Vader, if you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Right. And we never really saw the payoff on that.
No, in fact, I mean, really, Timothy Zahn himself, back in the 90s, he pretty much closed that door that you're not going to see it, because in Heir to the Empire, Obi-Wan goes away, Yoda goes away, and they say we can't come back. Like we're gone. And to the books, to the old expanded universe's credit, they let those characters go. I mean, as far as like any time after Return of the Jedi, they really did just say, okay, no, they're gone. And that's the end of it. And as to where I think, I mean, like the comic book industry doesn't do that. They kill off a character. I mean, they're going to come back next year, as to where they really did the respectful thing, I think, in the old EU of leaving them gone. And I don't know if that was George's call or what, because George would be the one that could have that kind of say.
And that was something they didn't even do with Luke in the EU, because, they didn't show Luke dying, but they had that series Legacy.
Yeah,
what that happens, hundreds of years after the original trilogy, and Luke comes back as a Force ghost, and he stuck around way longer than either Obi-Wan or Yoda did.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, that was with Cade Skywalker. That was actually a cool series. I really liked that.
Yeah.
They had that sexy
both series actually, because there were 2 of them.
Yeah, because there's what, Legacy War or something like that.
Well, no, they just called it like Legacy Volume 2, but they started following the young girl as kind of the main character instead of Cade.
Who was the sexy Sith Twi'leki? That gal. Oh my god.
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny you mention her because supposedly in Lucas's original draft for Episode 7, he was going to use her as a character.
Oh, I want that.
Right? Right?
We need evil women in Star Wars. Bad, like right now. This needs to be resolved, and I don't just mean Dr. Aphra, or Commander Tolvin.
That was a rare occasion of, Lucas actually taking something that he really liked from the expanded universe and saying, "Oh no, I like this. I'll use it."
Yeah. Oh shit, I didn't know that. Man, that would have been great.
Right?
That's terrible. I can't think of her name, but anyway, that's regardless. Wow. Well, okay. Talking about expanded, EU content, or should I say expanded content, which is now wholly canon, as to where before EU was just kind of like third tier, though we might talk about that a little bit after we get into the subject. So anyway, at San Diego Comic-Con, there was an announcement of a lot of Star Wars books, which is a point I brought up to you a couple Star Wars updates ago, Rob, was that I was like, where's the announcements for all the books? Where are the books? Like, we were supposed to be getting one, we were getting 1 or 2 a month for a while in 2017, and where the fuck did they go? And well, now we've got a bunch of announcements of novels and comics that are going to be coming out. One of them actually isn't even fiction, called Women of the Galaxy, which is just all artwork of women in Star Wars.
I'll be picking that up for sure.
Yeah, same here. I'll straight up buy it.
Yeah,
I actually. So I know people are going to ask me for this after I talk about it. I buy every Star Wars nonfiction. Well, I actually buy every fiction book too. I get it on Audible anyway. But I buy all the nonfiction stuff, like every single one of them, and I get them all professionally scanned. And so, I don't keep them behind me in the BDSM studio. I don't have them anymore, but I have them all on my hard drive. So this is one of those ones I'll be buying, and I'll definitely be getting it scanned, obviously. I am so excited for this.
And I buy all the art books basically, just because I come from an art background, and and I just love seeing a lot of the unused concept art.
Yeah,
because inevitably that stuff always ends up popping up again somewhere else in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, Filoni will want to use it or something, and he has. He's done it many times. One of the what did they call it? The Inquisitors from Rebels was unused concept art from The Force Awakens. Oh, okay. No, I didn't even know that.
The really big guy.
Okay. No, I know who you're talking about. I forget which brother.
If you go back and look at your Art of the Force Awakens book, you'll see him in there.
I will actually look that up. So yeah, because I collect all the art books too and get those scanned. So Women of the Galaxy, I'm excited for this. I'm curious to see, I'll read Kathleen Kennedy's forward. What the hell? And it looks like, the preview of the art that they showed is stunning. You have Ahsoka, you have Rey, you have Padme. That's the right stuff.
Right.
Speaking of Padme, and I think this is the biggest announcement as far as the novels or comics that are coming out. In this case, a novel being written by E.K. Johnston, who I am not familiar with, she wrote Ahsoka.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Which
it was okay.
Yeah. It was just okay. And I hate to say that because I love the character. And the audiobook was tremendous because you actually had, Ashley Eckstein. You actually had Ashley Eckstein, narrating it, which I thought was fantastic.
Right.
And really brought the book to life. It's just the story was a little.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk more about this later in another story, but we'll talk more about that.
All right. So, well, anyway, E.K. Johnston, perfectly serviceable author. I just don't know, anything outside of what was done with Ahsoka. But the book is Queen's Shadow, and it is all about, as I understand it, it's all about Padme Amidala going from queen to senator. I am so fucking excited to have this story. Actually, honestly, it doesn't matter what time frame in Padme's life that it was going to take. I just want more Padme Amidala.
Yep.
Maybe, next to Obi-Wan, maybe my favorite character from the prequels. And Natalie Portman. Yes. Well, not in episode 1, but you get my point. I love the character, and we need to know more, and we need to have this homage getting paid to the prequels, in my opinion, just like we were talking about with Clone Wars. I think this is the same deal. So, what was your thoughts when this announcement came about a Queen Shadow?
I pretty much feel the same way. Like I said, I'm really glad that they're giving the prequel era more attention, two, that they're giving more attention to female characters from the Star Wars universe.
Right.
And three, like I said, I really enjoyed it. I don't know if I would say she's my favorite character, but she's definitely up there so far as characters from the prequel era. So yeah, I'm like, this is overdue. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I'm trying to remember the book where there was mention of what was the book with Tanaka in it? And Tanaka dies. I think I might have just spoiled something.
That was the first Thrawn.
Was that the first Thrawn book?
Yeah, I think so.
Or was it Leia book?
Oh, you're right. It was the Princess Leia book.
Yeah, I think it was the Claudia Gray book.
Yeah, it was the Claudia Gray Princess Leia book.
Tanaka sees Leia and says, "Oh,
yeah,
I know whose daughter you are."
Yeah, and he was about to spill the beans.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, and that was the thing, is I remember when I read that and I was like, oh, whoa, that was, and a lot of Star Wars podcasts were talking about that scene in that book in particular, just going, oh, wow. I mean, so the character has gravitas, and so it can, she could definitely have her own novel. I think it's fantastic, and I'll take more, I'll take comic books. I'll whatever they want to put out about Padme, I am on board with that.
Right.
So let's see. We can get into a couple of the other ones. There's the one, Tales from Vader's Castle.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to this.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, actually, the Star Wars Adventures comics by IDW, which is interesting that Marvel doesn't do these, but they're actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not the greatest thing, but some of the storylines are really good, and the fact that they're a lot of it has concentrated on stuff from Rebels too, which is something I also love. So, like, we haven't really got anything about the Rebels characters aside from Hera and Dr. Aphra.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, anytime we get more Rebels stuff, I'm happy.
Sure, absolutely.
And Vader's castle has a long history in just Star Wars, legend anyway.
Yeah,
it's always something we need more of.
Yeah, well, it's on Mustafar, right? I mean, that's that there's so much history right there with Episode 3, of course. Yeah, I'm excited for this, even though it looks a little kiddish. I'll take it. I mean, or parts of it do.
Well, I mean that's the thing too. Is like I can't always dismiss the kiddish looking stuff, because that's why a lot of people don't watch the Clone Wars. That's why a lot of people don't watch Rebels, and those people are really missing out.
Yeah, well, there's actually, and they just recently released the audiobooks of these. There's this little, I don't know, 7-book series called Adventures in Wild Space, which kind of reminded me of in the 90s when they had Star Wars Galaxy of Fear, which was also kind of like a scholastic book club Star Wars story. That was actually a lot of fun. I love the fuck out of it. And
was that before or after the Young Jedi Knights?
I think it was before.
Okay.
Because it was like, this is like more when Goosebumps was really at the top of its game.
Yeah, well, that's what I remember as kind of being their response to like the young adult, sort of short fiction was the Young Jedi Knights, which, it's what's his name, so I don't really care that much.
Yeah, KJA, that shall not be spoken. Yeah. but I mean, like the Adventures in Wild Space books, like I was listening to them, and like, oh no, these are kind of fun. This is cool.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I read the first 2 ebooks. I haven't finished the series. There's like 6 books, right?
I think it's 7 now.
7 now. Okay. Yeah. So I'm like way behind, but yeah, they're actually pretty good.
Yeah, I like it. So what the hell, that's fine with me.
And like the Lost Stars, I mean, that's technically young adult fiction. Here again, like you really can't dismiss the quote unquote kids stuff.
Yeah, that was part of a whole series of where there's like was it Weapon of the Jedi was another one,
right?
And then there was Smuggler's Run, and then there was the one with Princess Leia, which was actually all about how they got shuttled Tydirian. I mean, yeah, you don't want to brush this stuff off just because it's thin.
And even though it was just an okay book, the Ahsoka novel was under the same imprint too.
Right. Yeah. So which, all the same. I don't know. I love getting more of the universe in whatever shape or size. And certainly Vader's Castle, I can't wait to get that more explored.
And I have to say, just as kind of like a bibliophile thing, like the book releases that they do for that young adult imprint, which is not by Bantam, I forget who it's by, tend to be a lot higher quality than the other Star Wars novels that got put out.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think I see what you're saying. Yeah. So, well, anyway, I think that all that's in good hands. They did talk about Solo. There's going to be the comic book, which is probably going to have deleted scenes like we were talking about earlier, which has been a trend, and a good trend, I think, because otherwise, why buy them? Yeah,
it says it right on there, expanded edition. So, I mean...
And that was the other thing too, is that the novelization, which was the butt of a pretty good joke on the last Star Wars update, the novelization of Solo,
the unnecessary novelization
to the needless movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did finally find out, which was my question at the time, is like, is this going to be an expanded edition? Or are we going to get more scenes or something like that?
Yeah.
And the novelization will have those. I just hope that they're actually worthwhile. I mean, I will say, as I reviewed on Star Wars Update in the past, The Last Jedi novel I thought was eons better than the movie, and it included a lot of really important shit that was not a part of the film, or that was originally deleted scenes.
My thing sort of is with this expanded edition stuff that they're doing with the post-release of the adaptations. I think they really would be better served by doing this expanded stuff in graphic novel form than in books. That's just a personal preference.
Well, admittedly, and I've said this many times,
and they did that with Rogue One.
Yeah, right, where it was solely in the comic book,
right?
Extra stuff, and it was Alexander Freed that did the novelization for Rogue One. It was just a straight read, pretty much. There might have been a couple little additions here and there, but that's it. Yeah, I mean, and I've said this many times in the past that Star Wars works better in the comic book medium than it does in the novel medium. As to where, ironically, it's competition. Star Trek, it's the exact opposite. Star Trek always works better as a novel and not as well as a comic book. Not as well as Star Wars works as a comic book. Because Star Wars is so visual. I mean, that's really it, is that Star Wars relies heavily on a cool factor and a look. Not so much what's being said, but what's being shown. And so I think, I agree with you overall that it's better when it's in a comic book format for that to be. So, which eventually we'll review the Last Jedi comic book. That has to happen. I think there's still a couple issues left before that's done and before it's worthwhile.
Oh, is it not done? I thought it was already done.
Was it just 4 issues? Because I thought they were going 6. Maybe I could be wrong about that. But anyway, more comics were also announced at San Diego Comic-Con. There's like the series called Age of the Republic, which is going to have a Darth Maul comic. I think that's, the more Maul.
Yeah, that was interesting because that's like a multi-era sort of tie-in, isn't it?
Yeah. There's Age of Rebellion, Age of Resistance. I mean, there's going to be a few different things going on.
Right.
But it is going to be like a 30-issue deal. So
yeah, that's pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a huge deal, but I'll take more Maul. I'm all about that. The other major announcement, I think, to come out would be, of course, I mean, and the comfort in this is who's writing it, but it's Star Wars Master and Apprentice, and it's by Claudia Gray. Now, whatever the fuck it says in between Star Wars and Claudia Gray doesn't really matter. What matters is that it says Claudia Gray, because you're in for gold.
Yes.
She is just, right now, I mean, I still like Zahn better, but right now she is really she's the queen of Star Wars, in my opinion. She is the I don't want to, I wouldn't disrespect a woman by saying she's like the female Filoni, but I use that as just a way to describe how important I think she is to the Star Wars universe in general.
You bring up a really good point. I mean, they should bring her on board to do more than just novels.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there was a confidence being shown that she was able to work with Rian Johnson for the book Bloodlines, really, really tightly. So I mean, bring her way in, kind of like with Star Trek, for example, Star Trek Discovery. You have Kirsten Byers, who was writing the Star Trek Voyager relaunch novels for years, and she's the best thing happening for Discovery. Like, she's making sure that ship's in shape. And so I think having someone like that who's from like the novel world that can help, really that can handle scope of, and Star Wars has real scope and scale when you let it. Clone Wars is proof of that. Claudia Gray can do that. And so I mean, the way that with Lost Stars, how she handled all those different timelines and everything going on around the Death Star and all that was just a masterwork. And so I think I agree with you. She should have a much larger role.
I mean, I just thought perfect place to put her in is to get her on the TV series that they're developing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about something with, lots of storylines, simultaneous storylines going on and lots of scope. And, I mean, that would be the perfect place to put her.
Yeah, I agree. But, so I say female Filoni with no disrespect. Like, I mean, she's her own, no doubt her own person. That's
one of the highest compliments you could give, in my opinion. I mean,
sure.
Like, he's the man.
Yeah. So this book, I mean, now I want to get your thoughts on it, Rob. But like Master and Apprentice, I don't know. I'm kind of burned. There was a there was a Obi-Wan and Anakin comic book series that Marvel did
Yeah,
last year. That was honestly, it was terrible. Like
right. I agree.
just,
It was
didn't do anything.
it was subpar, both in art and in storyline.
Right. So I don't know how many of these kind of stories I want to hear. I mean, well, this is more Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and it's pre-Phantom Menace, so that might be interesting. But I don't know. I never feel that great. I mean, Clone Wars worked because I feel like Anakin and Obi-Wan were very much equals. And Ahsoka became a better character when she became more of an equal and was able to take in part in the danger. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what the problem is right away is that the name of the franchise is Star Wars, and the period you're talking about pre-Phantom Menace is, 1,000 years of peace in the galaxy.
Right.
How interesting can it be?
Yeah. There was a not Approaching Storm. That was the book that took place before episode 2, but there was a book that was all about Chancellor Valorum.
I missed that one.
Yeah, that was in the old EU that took place before. Was it Cloak of Deception? Might have been, or some. I don't know. Anyway,
I don't know. That's where I dropped off.
Well, that's the thing. I was going to say it kind of bolsters your point that it was just the most boring fucking read. Because it's like, this isn't Star Wars. What the hell are you giving me here? This is why when we deal with the past in Star Wars, we're doing Tales of the Jedi. We're not doing fucking Peaceful Republic times. So yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you have any thoughts on it. I mean, Claudia Gray's writing it, so I feel comfortable.
Right.
But
I mean, your initial comment is really all that needs to be said.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. So, well, anyway, yeah. So speaking of great content, actually, this would be, Claudia Gray wasn't in on this, but the aforementioned Timothy Zahn was, in that it was a comic series based upon his book from 2017, which I think still for me, and I still have to finish alliances to say whether or not that would take top spot. But Star Wars Thrawn, the novel, is easily my favorite Star Wars novel of the new canon. And Marvel recently did, and we knew this was coming well ahead of time, but they did a full comic bookization of the novel.
Right.
And
adaptation.
Yeah, adaptation. Right. And it was a 6-issue run. It just finished up in July here. And well, Robin, I mean, what did you think about it, man? This is a retelling, but what do you got?
I'm usually not really big on adaptations, but this one, they did an excellent job.
Yeah.
They caught all the main story points, and more than that, I love the art in this book. I mean, Marvel has dropped the ball many times when it comes to the art in their Star Wars comic books, and the main artist, Luke Ross, he did the Force Awakens adaptation, which really wasn't as good, but he brought his A game to this comic, and it shows.
Yeah, I agree. The artistry was a real big seller for this. I thought actually breaking it up as a mini with 6 issues and breaking up each segment of the story into an issue actually gave it, ironically, better flow, even though it's breaking it up more than the novel did. It did give it really, really interesting flow, and you didn't feel so jarred when you would jump to the new rank that Thrawn held as you were reading the novelization.
Right.
Even though, again, I have no problems with the novelization. I just, credit where credit's due. There's parts of this that worked better.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's and one of the other things I wanted to mention about the art, I mean, the thing that really caught my attention initially about it is that Luke Ross's style is really evocative of Al Williamson, who did the old comic strips back in the day, the Star Wars comic book strip. Yeah. Well, it wasn't even just Marvel. I mean, it started out as newsprint strips.
Right in the newspaper.
He was working on, and he's got a very distinct illustrative style that I appreciate, and the fact that, and I don't know whether or not it was intentional. I did tweet at the artist one day just to kind of show my appreciation. He says, "Yeah, I've always really liked Al's work," and so I mean, I don't know whether or not he was directly inspired by Williamson or not, but I mean, it's got that feel to it, and it really kind of it brings me back into that universe of the early days of Star Wars comics, which I love.
Yeah, absolutely. I can appreciate all that too. And seeing some of the things, like really seeing them on the panel, as compared to just reading them and imagining them in your head was pretty helpful. Like,
Right.
made for some cooler moments. Like there's a point where Thrawn is kind of undercover and he's meeting with Governor Price, which all right. I said when this series started, I said, it was like, I want to see a young Governor Price because I bet she was hot. She was, but that's just me. So,
well, even that,
go ahead.
And that last issue, she was kind of in disguise wearing that blonde wig too.
Right. Yeah. And I knew that was going to happen, but anyway, but there's a point where he's meeting with Governor Price as a very young woman. And he has like these like Neo sunglasses from the Matrix on, like Thrawn does, to hide his red eyes.
They reminded me of what's his name from X-Men, Cyclops glasses, because he used to wear those red tinted glasses.
Right. Yeah, the ruby quartz glasses to block his laser vision. Yeah, exactly. Right. But he looks so cool, and I was like, wow, that was pretty nice. The other thing, and speaking of hot, look, I'm just saying it, folks. In the last issue, in issue 6. And this is what I was actually, another thing I was really hoping for with this is that, so spoiler alerts, in the end you have, he becomes Commander Vanto, but then the next time you see him, which is Thrawn's aide who kind of helps him along as he enters the Imperial life.
Eli Vanto.
Yeah, Eli Vanto. So Vanto eventually gets hired to go, effectively go and work for the Chiss Ascendancy, which is who Thrawn really works for. It's his people. And you get to see a Chiss ship, finally, in like the very last page of issue 6. Yeah. And that was fantastic. And then
a female Chiss.
Yeah, the female Chiss. Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Oh man, that's so hot! Like a female Thrawn. I was excited, and she looked great, and I thought it was, and just had obviously there's more to it, but that was, I loved that. So well worth the read. I know some people had trouble getting through the actual novel of Thrawn. The one thing that the comic book didn't translate, and that might have actually thrown people off, but that I loved about the novelization, was Thrawn at like the beginning of each chapter, or even in between chapters, he would, or in the middle of a chapter, he would like kind of give you an art of war sort of dialogue, where he would explain, the enemy does this, blah, 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 blah. And I loved that. Like, I thought that was so cool for Zahn to put that in the book. And it was so unique. For the comic book to miss it, I get why it's not there. And like I said, the comic book works on its own merits anyway. But that's the one thing I think really that the novel still held higher than the comic book.
Yeah, I completely agree with your point. But I understand why they did it too, because it is a little bit too much exposition for a comic book.
Yeah, it's like you're reading Arthur Conan Doyle. When,
which I mean, I love. And that was one of the things about the original characters that, like, I don't think they went to as great as lengths with that kind of exposition, but they did do it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I miss that, but there's value in having both. And I thought that it was great. I mean, obviously this was intentional. I thought it was great timing to have the comic book series come to an end just as Thrawn Alliances, the book was coming out. And that way, you get a refresher of the story and everything. And it worked perfectly for me as well. So, yeah, I mean, just brilliant work. Definitely one of the best Marvel releases. I'd probably put it in the top 10 of any kind of storyline or series that they've done with the comics so far.
It's kind of funny because the Thrawn comics sort of bookends Star Wars adaptation on the other end of the spectrum of the solo novel.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. The comic book that we needed for the book that we needed.
Right. A completely necessary adaptation of the completely needed Star Wars novel.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, well said, man. I agree. Yeah, I mean, because, like we were saying earlier with the Clone Wars announcement, like the only thing I could think of that matches the scale of excitement that announcement had was really when they announced that Thrawn would be coming back. I mean, like that was, you had people crying. I mean, it was huge, when that announcement hit. And I mean, certainly for me, I was excited as fuck. So yeah, this is, they've got a winner whenever they deal with this character. And of course, I'm sure we're going to see much more in the future, if anybody watched Rebels season 4 to know what happened there.
Right.
So anyway, any other comments on the Thrawn comic book?
No, I mean, I said my piece. Like I said, and I think I said when we initially, reviewed the first issue. But I mean, if there's one Star Wars product that's worth picking up this month, I think it's the Thrawn comics.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and just very well done. I mean, they really, really delivered with that. So, I'm going to ask you quick, okay, before we go to our next subject. I mean, how are you feeling about the Afra comic right now?
It's kind of in a lull.
Yeah. I mean, you're still getting the cute stuff with
yeah. I mean,
Tolvin, but
right. I do like the Tolvin stuff. Just the current storyline where she's on that prison ship, just not very interesting. Although the last issue, they did bring up something that was a little more Dr. Afra-y, that was kind of more of her archaeological sort of bent.
Right.
That was interesting. So maybe it's going to pick up again next month.
Yeah.
But up until that point, it's kind of hit a lull.
Yeah. Yeah. The Poe Dameron comic, I feel the same way with Afra, that other than the Tolvin stuff, it's not hitting me right now.
Yeah.
And like the Poe Dameron comic, we'll probably review that next month because I think the last issue for that will come out next month. But that's been enjoyable to read the past few issues because they've actually taken place after The Last Jedi.
Okay, I was just going to say that because I need to catch up on that because I had read that it does go post Last Jedi.
Yeah,
because they really quickly progressed the storyline, because I think it was around issue 25 they hit just before The Force Awakens,
right,
and then they like immediately just jumped way forward up until like close to the Last Jedi era.
Right. Which, I mean, funny thing, like, and I still get confused with this, admittedly. Like, I'm not used to Star Wars movies taking place one after the other, Like, I keep forgetting that, like, The Last Jedi literally takes place after.
Right.
Like, as soon as the credits hit, you can just punch in The Last Jedi and away you go. I mean, granted, this isn't the first time we've had to deal with that because now we have Rogue One and A New Hope that just butt right together, Right. But I still got to get used to that. That's a thing. But yeah, no,
it is a little odd. I mean, I hope they do like avoid that in the future with the what do you call it, the main films.
Yeah, with the episodic films, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. So, all right. Well, yeah, but the Poe Dameron comic, we'll definitely be covering that next month. Like I said, whenever it ends up coming to its end, I think it'll be worth to have a whole conversation around it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the Darth Vader comic right now is probably, as far as like running series, probably the best one running right now.
I've said that for the longest time. Is some of the best stuff has always been the Darth Vader. And they kind of had a little bit of a it's not a complete crossover, but a bit of a crossover with the main comic in the Mon Calamari storyline, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
And they resolved some lingering Clone Wars plot lines, with Prince Lichar and whatnot, or King Lichar, which I thought was really cool. Even though
that was a nice touch.
Yeah, which I mean, even though it was kind of sad.
Sure. But the Vader comic's been phenomenal. So if people want to be reading one of them, that's the one to read. The main Star Wars comic, still not exactly feeling it, but it's picking up a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay. Well, let's, while we're talking about all of this, comic books and everything as compared to the movies, Chuck Wendig, you actually made me aware of this, Robin. Chuck Wendig, who is known for writing the Aftermath trilogy, which is kind of widely panned by Star Wars fans. Even me, who I read everything, those were tough reads.
Yeah,
on my
I couldn't even finish. I read the first two books and I didn't even bother with the last one.
Yeah, I mean, like, I like the character of Mr. Bones and all that. That was kind of interesting. But other than that, I wasn't feeling it. But he also recently, what was the thing he was doing? Oh, he did the comic book.
Darth Vader Annual #2.
Exactly. So perfect segue. And there was an issue in that, like you were telling me, Robin, that you have Jyn Erso's mom in it, where she finds out that about the Death Star from this droid, supposedly by Vader, more or less. I mean, I read the comic. It was good. The comic wasn't bad, but Chuck Wendig wrote the comic.
Right.
And there's some issue with how Jyn Erso's mom finds out about the Death Star and what was originally laid down by James Luceno in the Rogue One prequel book, Catalyst. And so a person asks on Twitter, asks this of Chuck Wendig, and says, do you ever want to travel back in time to murder the person who coined the word canon? And Chuck Wendig says, well, canon usually just means, quote, which books belong in particular authentic catalog, end quote, which admittedly has its own problems, but canon in genre work is tricky at best. So a lot of people got a little hot and bothered about that comment.
And just for full context, the
Yes.
reason that person originally asked that question is because somebody had asked Wendig in an earlier tweet about this contradiction in the Vader comic.
Right. So then Chuck Wendig kind of goes on and says, it's hard to keep a complex plot straight in a single novel-sized story. Something like Star Wars is dozens of stories across multiple media with hundreds of creator input points. Stuff is going to get fiddly by its nature, and for me, I like it getting a little fiddly. Now, I want to comment on that part, okay, because no, I'm sorry. Lucasfilm has people they pay to keep all this stuff straight. It'd be one thing if you're just hiring disparate authors, and okay, yeah, it was tough for everybody to kind of keep things straight. No, there's an entire team that this is their job is to keep this shit straight, and
well, not only that, I mean, they said that was the reason for rebooting the universe.
Right. Yes,
post
exactly.
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, it's a selling point for what Disney's doing.
Yeah, if you're going to create the story group and you're going to reboot the universe and get rid of the EU, I believe they even said it in a press release. They're doing this for the reason of keeping things concise and within canon. And now you have people like Wendig come along and contradicting that entirely.
Right. Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Why bother then? And I think that's just an asshole thing to say about, I like getting a little fiddly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a cop out. That's really what it is.
Right.
He doesn't want to address that a mistake was made.
Right.
And I'm sure the story group people don't want to address the fact that they missed it. So
no, of course not.
They have been like, and there are people in the story group who've made not quite the same comment, but very similar comments. And so it's sort of like trying to, downplay the importance of canon.
Yeah.
So this has been a trend that's been building up to this.
Right. Now he does another tweet here. There's two more I want to read in his point or in kind of his thread. So he says, the problem with canon is that it demands viewing story as a series of rigorously tested data points. It demands we view story pieces as historically true, which is weird because A, it's fiction, and B, even real-ass history is full of wild and ragged contradictions and retcons. So that's kind of a big one. I want to read the next one quick because he says, okay, don't get me wrong. You definitely want consistency and authenticity binding stuff together. But as in life and history, stuff is rarely going to line up invisibly. And for me, some of the fun is how it doesn't. And that leaves room for fan theories and fanfic. That was a bullshit appeal to fans. And again, this whole argument falls apart over the fact that Disney did this on purpose. It was a selling point, and they pay an entire team to keep this stuff straight. It's not like nobody's saying that it happens invisibly. We're saying that it's intentional and that there's people that's their job.
Well, I mean, he says it right in the tweet there. It's hard to keep a complex plot straight in a single novel. Well, that's the job you signed up for. Okay. When you agree to write a Star Wars, novel or comic book or anything, you should know what you're getting into. And if you're not okay with that, then turn down the job.
Right.
Don't do it.
Right.
We're not, like you mentioned earlier, we're not writing Star Trek novels here.
Yeah, exactly. Where they can do anything. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it makes me think of like the church. The church was brilliant to put it in the book of Revelation. Hey, if you add one tittle to this fucking book, you're going to burn in hell, because they were putting it all on the line, and they're saying, because, if anybody tries to write anything, it's going to fuck everything up, But anyway, so I can appreciate their point on that. But yeah, this is just bullshit on Wendig's part. I can't stand the guy anyway. I'm sure he's a nice guy in a way, but this is just asshole stuff.
Well, I mean, I have the same problem with him that I do have with Pablo Hidalgo and the story group. Is they do tend to be, they think it's their job somehow to be sort of the linemen of Star Wars, and they can be rather nasty about it sometimes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the point is accurate about like with history. History does seem to like almost get rewritten. And we find out new things about history all the time, and you really can't know. History's not a science. You can't know about, you really can't know history unless you were there. I mean, that's
right. In fact, the argument seems to work against him that because it is fiction, it is easier to manage.
Right.
Real history, you have to do like even more hard work to get it straight.
Yeah, you have to do actual detective work.
Yeah, that's why you have archaeologists and historians and people who do research. I mean, you don't have to do a tenth or even 100th the amount of work you do in a fictional universe that you do with real history.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
honestly, he's saying because he can't even manage to do that. Fuck him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think Disney should fire him. I think it's just to say you're never working with us again. Like, what the hell are you doing? I mean, if they're going to fire James Gunn, fire this guy.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's a lot. Well, anyway, that's a loaded subject.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's a loaded gun, loaded James Gunn.
Ooh,
Anyway, but yeah, I'm glad you brought it up to me, but this is just so stupid. This might be the dumbest thing I've seen by an author since like the bullshit that Brian Herbert was saying about Dune, where he's going to make like children's books.
Ooh, well said.
Yeah, because like I'm sorry, Dune children books. Are you reading the shit that you're writing? Like, there's no kids books with that. And well, anyway, he said plenty of other BS copyright stuff too. But yeah, any other comments on Chuck Wendig's assholery here?
No, I mean, and so far as like where he makes the reference about where the word canon comes from, I understand his point to a certain degree, but it really is just a cop out. Yeah.
It's just like, oh, I fucked up, but I don't want to admit it.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, and hopefully, I don't know, Disney, just take this stuff seriously, because you're asking fans to not be pissed off. Well, then don't piss them off. But anyway, so here's something, talking about fixing things and maybe change a little history. I don't know. But why don't we go into our fan production of the month? And it's your pick this month, Robin. And why don't you break it down for me? But I got a peek at it, and I said, oh man, I am about to go reinstall this game, and I want to try this out.
Yeah, I hope people do go reinstall this game, because it is actually a good game. It's a game that I did not think was good when it first came out, and which part of it probably had a lot to do that it was following up probably one of the best Star Wars games ever made, which is Knights of the Old Republic.
Right.
So the name of the mod is the Sith Lords Restored Content mod, and we'll have a link to the ModDB page in the show notes. And with this, so if you don't know the story, originally BioWare did Knights of the Old Republic, but they handed off the sequel to Obsidian Entertainment,
right?
Who were the guys who made Fallout New Vegas and stuff like that. And this seems to be a reoccurring theme with their studio, where it's like they're handed a project and they're really not given the time they need to do it right. And they have they have a great team over there. It's a lot of the people that were from the Interplay days, who made like the Fallout games and stuff.
Yeah.
Who were working there at the time. So these are great game developers, but inevitably it seems like they always end up getting pressure from their publisher to release product before it's done. And Knights of the Old Republic 2, the Sith Lords, was really in a sad state when it was released commercially back, I think it was 2004.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, but they had, not only just, and it wasn't just bugs, but like a lot of like the story just kind of seemed disjointed and rushed and unfinished.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, when you're coming off of the story of Darth Revan, I mean, in the original, I mean, holy
right,
shit!
like I said, there's those awfully big shoes to fill.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, like I said, the problems behind the scenes that happened to him did not help them. But I think if you go back and you reinstall this mod and give it another shot, or even if you're just doing it the first time, you're going to find a great game.
So what exactly, like, I mean, what gets injected here? I mean, just like expanded.
Oh, there's
story?
there's enhanced story. So what happened is that the mod creators went in and data mined the content from the actual game, and they found all of these leftover dialogue and references to different planets and stuff that just was not finished and not in the game. So they took all of that and they built the content around it, the assets they need to actually put the stuff back in the game, and they made it happen. And they actually, like I said, they took a game that was really kind of incomplete and unfinished and finished it.
Yeah, this is beautiful, and I definitely recommend it. Just looking at it, and just what I'm hearing, it's making me think. There's a broader point that I have to bring up on Sovereign Tech proper, about passion versus doing things for passion versus doing things for money. And I think this stands heavily in where, wow, when you do it for the passion and you have time, because money's not necessarily the issue, what amazing things can happen with that. But I'm just going to tease that abstract subject. That's going to be something coming up in Sovereign Tech very soon.
I'm looking forward to that.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Actually, based upon things that I said, then I got an email from somebody, and then I'm going to have to drive the point home. So,
cool.
yeah. Anyway. Okay. So yeah, this looks brilliant. And now the Sith Lords, that's available on GOG, right? That's on
yes,
GOG.
It is.
Okay.
Yes. And that's where I'd recommend people getting it.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there's in the Sovereign Tech newsletter that should be coming out this week, there's a whole documentary that was done about GOG.com.
Oh, you saw that too. Wasn't that great?
Oh, it's phenomenal. I in fact, that's how I know to call it GOG. I was always calling it GOG,
right?
Like GOG and Magog. But it's actually GOG. And I was like, oh, well, great. GOG.com. Okay, that works. So, and it sounds damn similar to ZOG.email. But anyway, yeah. So, but yeah, I recommend checking out that documentary, and I certainly recommend frequenting that company for your gaming needs and desires.
Just in case anybody wants to know, GOG comes in. Originally, the company was called Good Old Games, and that was just an abbreviation of that.
Yeah.
But interesting point you bring up. It could also be good offline games.
Yeah, good offline games, just like ZOG is, of course, Zomia offline games.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's true because a lot of the games do work beautifully offline.
yeah. That's one of the reasons I recommend the company so much, because all their releases are DRM free, and you don't need an online connection.
Right.
Just all the stuff that other companies don't seem to want to provide you with. Somehow GOG does it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's the little company that can, kind of like in the comic book industry, they'd be Dark Horse.
Yeah.
They'd be Dark Horse Comics, where somehow they just do these beautiful books, even though.
Yeah. And I definitely recommend checking out that documentary. In fact, if I can think to pull up the link, I think we should include it in the show notes, just because it's that good.
Yeah. If I think of it, I've got it. I have it up in my what's set up for the newsletter this week.
And it really gives you I already had an appreciation for what they do, but the amount of work that goes in for them to restore some of these games and bring them back is astounding.
Yeah.
These people are heroes.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I say this all the time. I mean, the human condition is completely about art. And video games are art, and these people are saving it. It's really a remarkable thing. So, okay. Well, we've got our fan production of the month, so you can find the link in the show notes for that, for the Sith Lords Restored mod. But in fact, I said it to Robin before we started recording. I was like, we could do a mod every month. I mean, there's so many great mods. The mod scene for Star Wars games, especially one of my favorites, Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy.
Okay.
I mean, there's so many beautiful mods for that game. That's still one of the best, not offline but multiplayer. One of the best multiplayer games. I mean, it's a great offline game too, but multiplayer, it's just brilliant.
It's interesting you bring up Jedi Knight because an earlier entry in that franchise was actually what got me into the modding scene to begin with. Because when Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight came out, there was a really strong modding scene back in the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, go ahead.
And here again, it's kind of similar, like with people. So when they released Mysteries of the Sith expansion pack for that game, and in that game, some people had actually data mined a multiplayer level that like wasn't released in the game proper, and it was a multiplayer Bespin level of the duel between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, and it was so cool. And people data mined that, and and fixed it and put it together and released it as a mod. It was so cool.
The amazing things when we can actually get our hands on the code,
right?
Anything is possible. That's a message to take away for Sovereign Tech listeners. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. I'm sure other mods will show up in the future. So, all right. Well, why don't we wrap this up with our question of the month? And this is one, I mean, it just kind of like came to me and I started to think about it. And the question is, who should have directed the prequels? Now, I bring this up because I don't think that George Lucas is that bad of a director. In fact, I kind of appreciate his style because he just shows you everything. And he has such vision and such scale in what he does. He just shows you the whole thing. And a lot of people don't so much like that. It's not like Irvin Kershner with Empire Strikes Back, where he's using very clever lighting effects on Darth Vader's helmet and, and things like this to, really tell parts of the story, and so on. Or even, well, there's debate whether or not how much Richard Marquand actually did directing for Return of the Jedi. Some people say George Lucas was directing that pretty hard, really. But in any case, I don't mind George Lucas as a director personally, but a lot of people do bring up the point that, maybe if we had some, a little more clever cinematography, a little more clever direction with the prequels, they could have been significantly better films. And I can take that point. I can understand what they're saying. I mean, I think ultimately it comes down to dialogue is any real issue with those movies. But yeah, I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, who, with episodes, and I'd break them up, all of them, episodes 1, 2, and 3. Like, who would I have directing each one of those? Would I even keep George Lucas in his place? Would I say, no, he can do episode 1, and then somebody could have done episode 2 and episode 3? I'm willing to break, if you want to start off with like each film and you want to go back and forth on it, we can do that, Robin.
Sure.
And I guess I'll start off with episode 1. And this is episode 1. I mean, this might seem like a bit of a cop-out, but I would have had Steven Spielberg direct it. And Spielberg had problems with the movie. Like, we knew that historically, that he said, like, the ending doesn't make any sense. He's like, there's a lot of things that people just aren't going to get about this film, George. You need to change some of this up. So certainly that colors my bias on that. But I think Spielberg would have been perfect for it because he can take the most boring stories in the world and still have you feel a lot of emotions. I think something like, and I'm not comparing episode 1 to Schindler's List at all, but I'm just saying that he can pull that off.
Well, it's really interesting you bring this up because I was going to say the same thing.
Okay.
And not only, and the thing is that George Lucas is in agreement with us because I distinctly remember back in the day that George said that he approached Spielberg about directing episode 1. And Spielberg was basically, no, you need to do this, George.
Okay.
And I really think, I mean, it's unfortunate that he wasn't willing to take that on. Maybe he had other stuff going on. That's the reason he said that. But yeah, I completely agree with you on this on all points.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So fair enough with episode 1. That's the person I'd hand it over to. And also, I think Spielberg wouldn't have been afraid, and you can see this with to some degree with the Indiana Jones films and some of his other movies. He wouldn't have been, one of the big things, like there's those re-edits of all the prequels really, but episode 1 is a very popular one to re-edit. Like you have the Phantom edit and some others. Some of those edits do a very clever thing where like they have the Nemodians speak with this weird mechanical language and then they just have it all be subtitled.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes the film, even I have to admit, as somebody that likes episode 1, it makes the film infinitely more watchable.
Yeah.
And if they did that with a lot of other things, like I think Spielberg wouldn't have been afraid of the subtitles, and that could have been a very helpful thing as far as that goes. So let's go to episode 2 with Attack of the Clones. I'll give my pick first, and it's kind of back and forth on this, but I was going to give it to Stephen Sommers. For those that don't know Stephen Sommers, he directed the Mummy movies, as well as the Scorpion King. I say that because that means, he has some experience with doing some direction in the desert, and he does a pretty good job of it. He also, probably my favorite movie that he actually did. I mean, and he's a smaller time director. A lot of people don't usually think of him for much of anything, but he did G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, which was which I thought was a fantastic film. I mean, I'm a huge G.I. Joe fan, but that movie was so updated, but yet so true to the source material somehow at the same time. I don't know how he did it. And it was all him. Like, I mean, I think he wrote it too. But yeah, Stephen Sommers, I thought he was phenomenal as far as that goes. And I think he would have taken episode 2 and he would have kept it Star Wars, but he could have handled like a lot of the moving pieces, with the clone troopers and things like this in a way that I think George Lucas somehow didn't exactly pull it off. So I'd hand it over to him, but that's kind of a weird pick on my part, because I know he's not like a super well-known director. But do you have any thoughts on episode 2?
Thinking about it now, I actually know immediately who I would do for episode 2, and that would be Frank Darabont, who was actually at one time a Lucasfilm insider.
Sure.
Because he worked on the Young Indiana Jones television series. Right. But if people, he his movies, he did a lot of the Stephen King adaptations, like The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. And he's done more kind of like horror stuff and later in his work, because he did The Mist, and he's also, I guess, directed a lot of the Walking Dead episodes. He's like the main person behind that, really. But I'm thinking specifically with like the Shawshank Redemption and The Majestic, he really has an ability to kind of do really well with strong emotional stories, that kind of like hit you in your core. And I really think he probably could have done the love story between Padme and Anakin a lot more justice.
Or the murdering of sand people.
Exactly. I think he would have been able to hit those darker, themes in the movie a lot better too. So yeah, that'd be my pick.
Yeah, I mean, and give a guy like that Christopher Lee to direct, and you're in for a great time.
Yeah.
so I think that's a really interesting pick. Okay, I like that. I like that we're kind of digging deep, getting a little sweaty. All right, so let's go to episode 3. Of course, this is the movie that, this is the prequel that some people even claim is their favorite film out of the entire saga. Even people that, would not have grown up with the prequels whatsoever, which I think is interesting. So some people, this might be the movie where they'd say, no, you could leave George Lucas there, like he did pretty good with this one. And I would certainly, I wouldn't argue too much with people on that. But honestly, I would hand the way this one plays out, a lot of the mindlessness that has to get put on display, like with Order 66, even the kind of the turn that Anakin, of course, goes through and so on. This is another kind of a deeper pick for me, but I'd give it to Paul W.S. Anderson. Now, Paul W.S. Anderson is actually, next to Ridley Scott, is actually my favorite director. And it's not that he's done perfect movies, but he's done some duds. He made, as far as a dud goes, he made the movie about that's terrible. Pompeii. Yeah, I was like, wait, where Mount Vesuvius go? Yeah, Pompeii. He did the movie Pompeii, which is easily one of the worst movies ever made. But he's also done some of the best. He directed Mortal Kombat, the movie from '95. Which I think is phenomenal. He's probably best known for doing the Resident Evil series of movies, which are very artistic. Like, I think those are super avant-garde films, and people just don't give them the credit that they deserve and just kind of write them off. But I would love to see him deal with the story overall, because you had to do so much in episode 3 to bring closure to the prequel trilogy, that I think he could have put together everything in a very artsy way. Not so much, there'd be action as well. He can obviously do action very, very well. But I think he would have put things together in something that may not have had, emotion so much to it, but it would have come out in a way that people would, I think, would find very memorable with episode 3, more so than it is. But I don't know. You have a pick for episode 3, Rob?
Yeah, in fact, you stole my thunder a little bit there, man.
Okay.
I would have picked Ridley Scott.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I'll give Ridley Scott anything, but yeah.
Well, I mean, and he's like, in his science fiction work, he's referenced Star Wars a lot, and it seems like he's spent a lot of his later career trying to either live up to or eclipse Star Wars in some way or another. And so I'm like, why not just give the guy the shot at doing Star Wars? Yeah. And not only that, I mean, I think his obviously his visual style, I think, would have lended a whole lot to Revenge of the Sith. Not that Revenge of the Sith was really lacking in any way in that terms, but I think it would have dialed it up to 11.
Yeah, it could have made it a lot more terrifying.
Yeah, well, and that was the other thing I was going to say too, is that my biggest thing with episode 3 is it is kind of lacking in a way a lot of like the foreboding and dread that I thought should have been in the movie, and I think he would have pulled that off masterfully.
Yeah. I mean, and actually, this is the same part of the reason I chose Paul W.S. Anderson as well, is that episode 3 really need a little more horror element to it. I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And both Ridley and I think Paul W.S. Anderson could have pulled off the horror better than George.
I mean, aside from the opera scene for a movie with the name Sith in it, it has very little Sith.
Yeah, good point. And of course, everybody remembers that scene too. It's a beautiful scene.
Right.
Some of the best Star Wars stuff.
What somebody like Ridley Scott would have done with a scene like that.
Yeah. Oh, holy shit. Yeah. You raise a great point, because I remember when Alien Covenant came out recently, he came out and said, he says, there's no reason the Alien movie shouldn't be as big as Star Wars. I agree with him. There's no reason they shouldn't be.
I do too. Like I said, and he's referenced it before earlier, and kind of talked about, the cultural impact of Star Wars overall. And, he even admits that the first film had a huge impact on him.
Sure.
That originally he wasn't interested in doing science fiction. And then because of Star Wars, he went on to do Alien and Blade Runner. So, right. I mean, because of, Star Wars sparking interest in science fiction for Ridley Scott, we got two of some of the greatest, science fiction movies ever made.
Oh man, that just hit me. Can you imagine what he would have done with Coruscant?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the other thing too. It's like we only got to see like the top level of Coruscant. I want to see the underworld.
Imagine.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Give Ridley Scott Coruscant. He would have. Holy shit! You'd have clone troopers eating Chinese. I mean, it'd be.
Yeah.
But I mean, all seriousness.
Well, it's funny thing you mentioned that, because that unreleased game, Star Wars 1313, that they were making before Disney shut them down. I mean, you go and look at the concept that's available online, and it looks like a Ridley Scott movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great point. Oh man, yeah, and we would have found out a lot more about those death sticks too from episode 2. Man, that would have been amazing. Oh, Ridley Scott's a great call. That's the one that I think out of the 3, that's the one that I actually really want to see. I want to see Ridley Scott doing episode 3. That would have been nuts. All right, cool. Yeah, well, I mean, I just thought there was like a fun little mind game to play. To see, how these things could have been different. And I think there's genuine ways that they really could have been very, very different, even if there were just little hints of ways that they were different. But they could have changed the movies and the popular perception in a pretty major way all the same. So, wow. Yeah, damn, great picks. So, all right. Well, I guess we can wrap this up here, but I want to wrap it up with the question that I seem to end every Star Wars update with. I mean, Robin, how are you feeling about Star Wars right now?
Obviously with the Clone Wars announcement, I'm feeling really damn good. Like I said, I think I talked about this in our first episode together, but I'm kind of like in a point in Star Wars universe where like they could do anything they want to it, and I still have plenty stuff in the back catalog that I really love and that I can still enjoy whenever I want. So, right. I mean, like when people say stuff like, they're ruining Star Wars, to me, that's kind of ridiculous, because, what is any of the stuff they're doing now, how is that ruining your experience of, the joy that you got from it in the past? What's stopping you from going back and watching the old movies and loving them, And so, but that being said, when they're coming out with really good content, that does appeal to you and does strike at that, that core of that Star Wars nerddom that we all love, it is just that much better.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And like really this month, especially, you get hit with, Clone Wars saved, Carrie Fisher's coming back, or we're going to have like Princess Leia is going to be a character, etc. in episode 9, and Thrawn alliances, having a new Thrawn book. I mean, like just that alone, there's not much else other than a great video game that I'd ask for from Star Wars right now. So
yeah, that seems to be the biggest thing lacking in Star Wars right now is good video games.
Yeah, it's kind of striking because this really shouldn't be hard to do.
No, and they've had plenty of years to get it right, and they've just made a mockery of it.
Right. I mean, if anything, do remasters, I mean, it's crazy that the most exciting thing happening in Star Wars gaming is that episode 1 Racer got re-released on Steam and GOG.
Right. Yeah.
Like what the hell? I mean, a game that's like almost 20 years old and that's the most exciting thing happening for you in video games is, as far as Disney goes, that's crazy. I mean, that just shouldn't be. But that said, the 3 things that I listed off are enough for me to make me a very happy Star Wars fan right now.
Well, like as you mentioned too, I think we're going to have more mods in our fan work of the month. So, I mean, if you're feeling the lack in the Star Wars universe, don't worry, we're going to have you covered.
Yeah, absolutely. Always new stuff every month that we talk about, that we bring to you, and that you get to explore on the Star Wars update. So, Robin, once again, man, this is always one of my favorite times of the month. And
me too.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I walk away from these episodes with a smile on my face, and and I might have to go jump in VR and throw on Return of the Jedi or something. I don't know, but in fact, all right, real quick, I just love that I get to say that. It's like, yeah, I say it to everybody now. It's like, oh yeah, I was just in VR, and I was, because like I've been wanting to say this since the '90s, and I never got to. Now I can. But
what? Someday somebody's going to come up with some version of a VR TIE fighter game, and we're never going to come out.
No, I'll never leave. I'll never leave. that game is the lifestyle. Like I say, I put it on all my social media. The first thing it says about me, TIE fighter pilot. Sometimes it's the only thing it says about me.
We shouldn't call them computers. We should call them TIE fighter boxes.
Yeah, that's the old saying, man. That's the conclusion I came to. It's like, that's all it has to do. If it can play TIE fighter, it's a computer. I'm good. Anyway, so, all right, man. Well, thanks a lot, Robin. We'll be back next month. We'll get our review of Thrawn Alliances in, along with, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of some other kind of news that we just didn't expect whatsoever. It just doesn't seem to stop, even though, we expected it to. But yeah, all right, that's it. And there will be one more episode to come out in July, believe it or not. So, Robin, thank you again, man. And we will see all of you on the other side.